Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. Today we have the Ultramarines versus
the Tau of the Tau Sept. And so let's get right into the armies. Alright, so for today I'm bringing 2,000 points of Tau from the Tau Sept, which equivalents to 1,995 points. But for starters, I have my Warlord, which is a commander in an Enforcer battlesuit. This one just naturally has a 2-up armor save and just a few different abilities. But basically, I looked at all this stuff and I was like, you know what, the Flamers are pretty good because it's D6 plus 2. And so I basically gave him a Flamer, Fusion Blaster, he has a Pulse Carbine, an Onager Gauntlet, and that's his relic, by the way, an Onager Gauntlet, so he has some melee capabilities. He has -1 damage for hardened armor. He has a shield generator. He has a drone shield as well. Yeah, I don't know. You never know. And then there's a precision of the hunter. He can reroll all hit and wound rolls. So I thought I definitely had to have that. And yeah, just a few other abilities there. So he's basically going to function as a bulwark, basically. And he has a gun drone and a shield drone. And then I have my other commander, which is the Long Strike. And get your hand out of the way. Thank you. Alright, and so basically, he's a commander with a 3-up ballistic skill. And so, of course, I'm going to bring the railgun. The day the announcement of this weapon was out, all the 3D printing communities were like, I need railgun STCs, or STLs, stat. And so, I got the big gun. And so this one will ignore invulnerable saves. Now, the reason why I'm using it, I know that like the pros say that this is a bad weapon, but I wanted to try it, and this commander can reroll 1 hit per fire natively, and the Tau Sept will allow him to do that anyway. So I got 2 rerolls, but of different guns. Gave him some smart missiles, some seeker missiles, and he can, I believe, what was it? Can't remember. He has another. I think he can. Yeah, he adds 1 to a wound roll against monsters and vehicles. So if anyone's going to use the railgun, he has the best chance of doing it with a 3-up ballistic skill. Can be pushed to a 2-up with marker lights and stuff like that. So I wanted to try this weapon out. Then troops. Not much here. We just have a bunch of Breacher Fire Warriors, and so close encounters of the third kind here. So essentially, what's going to happen is, these are just my troops. They're decent guys with some pretty big guns and weapons and stuff. I'm trying to keep it simple because a new army is always difficult to learn, and I'm giving each of them a Devilfish. Devilfishes are relatively cheap. These guys have pretty good weapons, actually, despite being ballistic skill 4. 3-up armor saves. They have their burst cannon. They have smart missile systems, and each of them have 2 seeker missiles each, which are 1 shot each. They don't have any drones, despite it like showing it here. Well, I believe I don't.
I think if they die, they have a drone spawn thing.
Oh, well, I'll have to look that up. But so far, they don't have any drones listed. I didn't give them any drones. So these are basically, despite transports, these guys hit really hard, surprisingly. Toughness 7, 3-up armor saves. These are some pretty good transports. I would have mostly just brought these extra breachers because so I could have more of these Devilfish. And then moving on to fast attack. Fast attack is surprising with all the stuff that is in there. But basically, I have 2 Pathfinder teams, and these Pathfinder teams essentially are just here to give marker lights, but they also have really good long range. Pathfinders, interestingly, your troops can also apply marker lights, but if they do it, they're not going to move that turn. Pathfinders can do it and move, or they can move and then do it at the end of their turn, unlike the other guys who have to do it at the beginning of the turn. There's a stratagem that can help you, but and so one squad has rail rifles, or have 3 rail rifles, which is a very powerful weapon. Then the other squad will have ion rifles, which is also powerful, but this is powerful against infantry. The other one is powerful against like tanks and stuff, or Terminators. And then on to elites. We have a unit of stealth suits. These guys are pretty cool. They're pretty tough. They have a 3-up armor save, but they have +1 to cover probably almost all the time, or they actually have a 1-up, -1 to hit, and additional 1 to any armor saving throw while they're in the cover, so they get a 2-up from cover. And they can go in early, and they have homing beacon. which is an interesting thing, which will allow me to deep strike a crisis unit on the first turn next to them. Interesting how that had never heard of that before, but it's there. And then I have, of course, the crisis team. I probably picked all the worst guns for them, but basically these guys have flamers and missile pods, and a shield generator each. Their sergeant has a 2-up armor save, but the rest have their 3-ups. So 3-ups, 4-ups, and a lot of firepower. So we'll see how that goes. And then finally, crisis bodyguards. These technically are elites, but they're filed under the no force organizations chart, as when I brought a commander, I could bring a free unit. So you could actually have a lot of crisis suits. So these are bodyguards here. They're basically, they have the bodyguard rule and stuff. They have shield generators. The sergeant has a 2-up. They have a drone with a 4-up. And they have 4-up and vulnerable saves. Actually, do they? Did I give that to them? Yes, they do. And they have fusion blasters and flamers. So basically meltas and flamers. So relatively close range. And then we have heavy support, which is a broadside. Super tough, big gun. So basically each of them have a heavy rail rifle, a twin plasma rifle, and shield drones, 4-up, invulnerable save. These guys are going to be very powerful. They're going to hit very hard. Yep. And so that is it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but basically I followed basic tactics of surrounding the board, shooting everything up, and having very strong firepower. Well, not the strongest, but it's something. And that is 2,000 points of Tau Sept.
Alright, you guys, so for my Ultramarines, they have a ridiculous amount of characters, unique ones at that, and so I was like, well, I will take as many as I can. So I have 3. Now, obviously, you can't take them without taking Gulliman, because why not? He is the Warlord. By default, he has to be. He has a couple of really cool weapons. He has the Emperor's Sword, which on more wound rolls of 6 plus. So I guess if he has +1 to his hit, I guess that I don't know. Anyway, it inflicts D3 mortal wounds in addition, and then he has a really strong power fist that does flat 4 damage. He has Armor of Fate, which is his armor, so he has a 3-up invuln, and then if he dies on a 4-up, he gets back up with D6 wounds. I get 3 extra command points for him being in the army. So I'm basically, even though I've spent 3, I think I'm gonna basically start the game with 6, which is pretty cool. And then he has a bunch of abilities, being a Primarch. So he has Master of Battle, which is add 1 to advance and charge rolls for Imperium units while they're within 12 inches of him. And then reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Imperium units within 12 inches, and reroll morale tests within 12 inches. So he has a 12-inch bubble. And then him being the Ultramarines Primarch, Ultramarines core and characters within 6 inches of him reroll wound rolls of 1. Reroll hit roll. Oh no, sorry. He has a 6-inch bubble of reroll all hit rolls. And then for Ultramarines core units, reroll wound rolls of 1. And then nobility made manifest as his warlord trait, so infantry units and bikers within 6 inches of him can perform heroic interventions. So basically, if he's getting the mess beat out of him, all his friends can come and help. To his immediate right is Marnius Calgar, and I was like, well, I might as well try him as well, being the chapter master. He looks like he's got the Gravis keyword, so he's just kind of a tanky guy with big power fists. He has a 4-up invuln save, and all damage towards him is halved. He has the chapter master reroll and, rights of battle, so classic chapter master stuff, with a 4-up invuln and whatever. And then to his all the way to the left is Tigurius. So he has 3 psychic powers. I gave him Scryer's Gaze, Telepathic Assault, and Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. So Scryer's Gaze, I can either get a command point or add 1 once in that turn. A friendly Ultramarines unit within 18 inches can reroll either a hit roll, wound roll, or damage roll. Telepathic Assault. Basically, I roll 2d6 and add 2 to an enemy unit within 24 inches. And then for each point I exceed their leadership by with that roll and the +2, they take a mortal wound for each point. So if they have leadership 5 and I roll boxcars, they're going to take like 9 damage. I think that's the math. 9 mortal wounds, which is kind of crazy. But, you know, I don't know anything with that low leadership. Storm of the Emperor's Wrath is his other one. Select the nearest enemy unit that's within 18 inches of invisible to him. I get to roll 1d6 for each model in that unit, and for each 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound. So he just a lot of mortal wounds. He obviously has a relic thing. He has a relic thing naturally, Hood of Hellfire. For psychic tests or deny tests, he adds 1 to the total of either of them. And then at the start of the battle round, I select one friendly Ultramarines core or character unit within 6 inches. And then they're -1 to be hit for the rest of that battle round. And then that is my HQs, just unique characters because I have so many I wanted to try them out. And that is where we got. Right behind them are 3 squads of intercessors. Now the first 2 have just regular auto bolt rifles so they can run and shoot, and that's no issue. And then behind them though are a squad of intercessors with the stalker bolt rifles, which are the heavy ones, and they are strength 4, but they're minus AP2 and 2 damage. So they're kind of anti anything with more than 1 wound. And that is my troops. Directly behind them, I have in my elite section a full squad of Vanguard veterans. Now these guys have the storm shields and the power axes, except for their sergeant, who has the shield and hammer, essentially. Now, having the shield negates armor of contempt for them, but it doesn't really matter because it basically does the same thing, and it gives them an invuln. And then in the middle is just a base apothecary. He has nothing special. I think when I made the list, it says he has a relic, but I actually never gave him one. So that, just ignore that. So he's just a base apothecary because I had the points for one, so I took it. And then next to him is a full squad of Blade Guard vets, and the sergeant has the Neo-Volkite pistol because I had 5 points. And that's my elites, just kind of plain and simple, I guess. Moving into fast attacks, I just have this one squad of Inceptors with the little bolt pistols, assault bolters. So they can just zoom around and pew pew pew, because Tau are notoriously soft. But their vehicles are not. And then in the heavy support, I have 2 squads of Devastator Marines. One is with 4 grav cannons, and one is with 4 las cannons. And so that's my 2,000 points. I'm pretty excited because Ultramarines have some really interesting stratagems. So for instance, in the tactical doctrine, units can move, and then in the shooting phase, if they didn't run or fall back, they actually count as not having moved. So in tactical doctrine, my Devastator Marines can actually roam around the board and not have any issues with their shooting, or same with the rapid fire people or anything like that. And so that's pretty cool. And then Ultramarines can also fall back and shoot that turn because Ultramarines. And that's just an army-wide thing. And so yeah, so I'm excited to give the Ultramarines a go. And hopefully they will not all die on the first turn. Alright, you guys, so for the mission, we are playing Tide of Conviction. So there's a whole bunch of objectives on the field. So the points for primaries are Control 2, Control 3, or Control More. And then the secondary is if you control through, and it's each turn starting on the first one. So on the first turn, second turn, third turn, and fourth turn, if you control one of the ones in the opponent's territory, so they're half of the map, you get 2 victory points. And then at the end of the battle, each player scores 4 victory points if they control the objective marker in the opponent's deployment zone, so that very back objective, or 2 points for the other 2 that are in their territory. And then obviously, this being Nephilim, we get the Battle Force command point bonus where we gain command points every turn, except in this one it has another mission rule, supply lines, that we only receive it if we hold our back deployment zone. or not deployment zone, back objective. So if that gets taken from us, we stop gaining command points, and also if they have it by the end, then it's just a lot of points for them. And yeah, that's the mission.
All right. So for a battlefield, essentially, I wanted to have a lot of places of cover for my pathfinders where they could sit and still have line of sight, and also cover for me to be able to move up. I want to be able to be the first one to shoot and the first one to be able to hit. That's essentially the idea I have. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, so I essentially did not want to be shot. So I also put a bunch of buildings and stuff everywhere. Because my shooting, the little bit that I do have, is much shorter range probably. I don't actually know anything about his model, so he might have some short range too, I don't know. Sure, I have my Devastator Marines, but in tactical they'll actually be able to move around and shoot without any issues. So I'm trying to play more of a close quarter game. And so yeah, just buildings everywhere, so that way I could just run and hide and stuff, but I don't know how well that's gonna work. So we'll see.
Alright, so for secondaries, for the Tau, decisive action, which is basically if I control half or more of the objectives on the battlefield, I get an extra 4 points per turn. Now this is based off which Monkta I chose. So if I do the one that's for the first half of the game, this will apply for the first 3 turns. If I do it for the second half of the game, it'll apply for the last 3 turns. I don't know what to think. This is literally a gamble, so it really depends on the Monkta I take. Then no prisoners. I can get up to 100 wounds in this, but I have to obliterate his entire army, so I think I pretty much won by that point. If I kill half his army, I mean, something. And then raise the banners high. I got a lot of infantry, might not be doing anything, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Alright, and that's it for the Tau.
Yeah, so for Ultramarines, they have one Ultramarine specific secondary, which basically it takes a full battle round, and it's an action on the no man's land objectives, and if it's completed I gain 4 points for each one that I claim for Macridge, essentially, or Macrag, or however you guys pronounce it. And then Shock Tactics is my second one, so all of these ended up being Space Marine ones. So Shock Tactics, basically if I take an objective from him, I get 3 points. Or, wait, that's return infinite adeptus. Word control, okay, I didn't write. Yeah, so if I take an objective from him, that's 3 points. And then Oaths of Moment is pretty straightforward. It's an easy one to do for the most part, or at least get some points. So I get a point if I kill a character, vehicle, or monster. I get a point if no one failed a morale test, and my units are small enough that they'll just die instead of have to take morale. And then I get a point if someone is sitting in the middle of the map. So, hopefully easy enough to do for all of them, but we will find out.
Alright, so for me, first I place my stealth suits up, although I probably placed them in a bad spot. I placed them up front. I probably could have placed them a little bit closer elsewhere, but it's pretty risky since he's mostly a melee army. The next thing that's up is I place my Pathfinder teams in position since they get to do a pre-move, sort of. And I'm positioning myself to take the objectives and also maintain fire lanes, so my long strike is in a position where he can do some pretty decent, like 50-50s. He can go here and there if he wanted to. Apart from that, my crisis suits and broadsides were spread around my commander. Maybe the broadsides were placed in a place where they'd have a good amount of line of sight and such. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to maintain the fire base, and we'll see how things go.
Yeah, so I have a plan, I believe. So I place my jump pack units on the edges, easy response sections, but they also, are somewhat covered, so they can I don't know, move and do stuff, I guess. And then, I put my heavy weapons in the middle so that way they can shoot or move to fire lanes. And basically just tried to place my army a little farther up front. I know that's probably not a great idea given how shooty he is, but if I get the first turn, it'll allow me to do stuff, or I will die on the first turn. Because I don't know, there's not really much else for me to do. I can't just sit back too much because I have mostly slow units, so a little kind of confusing. Not as much cover in the deployment zone, so I have to get out to the middle of the map where there's more stuff to hide behind and around.
Alright, so for who should go first, if I go first, I'll get some early shots off. There's not that many targets. I mean, there is the Vanguard veterans, but they got 4-ups. Most of my early targets have invulnerable saves or cover. So if you go first, there's a limit to really what I can do. It's more of an uphill valley.
End up moving into all the cover and stuff.
Yeah, and you have the last cannons, which is a little bit iffy for me. I'd have to be careful and watch where I go, or try to kill those things first. So we'll see how that goes. It is a bit hard to say what to do, but if I went first, I'll get a little bit of damage off. If you go second, I feel like overall, in the whole overall battle plan, me going second is bad for me. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, it probably... Yeah, because there's not... I mean, there is shooting that you can do, but I think it'd be more of the movement that you would have. I think that would be your bonus there. Yeah, so for me, I definitely want to go first, because, as I said, there is almost no cover in my deployment zone. So I need to get to the middle of the map so I can hide, and sneak around buildings and then pop out of nowhere and punch him in the face. That is the goal. So yeah, going first obviously is what I want to do. If I do not go first, I actually have a stratagem to redeploy 3 units. I think it's 3, up to 3. I could move around some guys, but I don't know who I would actually move at this point. So yeah, I think first turn will be good for me. Second turn, yeah, you'll definitely be able to shoot some stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it would look like if I went second.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go first.
Alrighty then. Yeah. I saw that in slow motion.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Do I want to redeploy units really quick? Let me look around. What do you have?
Well,
what are your ranges?
Far, very far. So we'll just skip to that ahead. So Tau, turn 1. Alright, for pre-battle, my opponent decided not to redeploy anything. However, my Pathfinders get a free 7-inch move at the start of the game for the first battle round, and so they moved up to take objectives and get into cover. Alright, so for the movement phase, I basically just moved up to take objectives and start prepping for shooting. So a lot of my breachers disgorged from their devilfish and they moved to take objectives. The stealth shoots moved out to get a better position, and I had them run, but they rolled a 1. Then I spent a command point to re-roll that, and they rolled a 2. So they're touching the sides of the thing to get some light cover to get some bonuses to survive. And the rest of my vehicles moved up, avoiding line of sight from the last cannons to try to block things and shoot things. And so we will see how that goes. And yeah, and all my guys are doing the raise the banners, and so the actions are in progress. I don't really know where to put my commander or the crisis guys yet, so I'm sort of keeping them relatively in the middle. They can move fast and they're shooting, so honestly they really have control of the whole board essentially in one turn, so it's not that big of a deal if I keep them in the back right now. And I forgot to disgorge one of my devilfish's guys. They're supposed to be holding the center, but oops. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. All right, so for the shooting phase, it wasn't the best. We would like to know, we looked through the rules quickly because one was curious, is that if we can see through our own vehicles and stuff, and apparently not, but I could have moved them around slightly differently. So for the first turn, we're going to ignore that, being able to shoot through my other vehicles. After this, then we're going to play on it. It would only mean I would shuffle my guys around a little bit different, but down to shooting. My Pathfinder team tried to get marker lights on the intercessors, did not. My and once that failed, Pathfinders fired on them, didn't do much damage, but the rail rifles just slaughtered them. Then my Devilfish mag dumped into them, did some pretty good wounds, and there was one intercessor left with 1 wound. Then the Long Strike fired his railgun into the interceptors and successfully hit and wounded and just outright killed him despite the cover bonuses and all that stuff. And because the weapon does 3 mortal wounds in addition, the rules are like if there are any times that there are mortal wounds done in addition to attacks, what you do is you resolve the attacks with the saves first, and then you apply the wounds. And it's not necessarily to a single model, it's just in general. And so I was able to kill 2 with that 1 shot. And then the rest of his shots did 1 wound. And then after that, broadsides fired, did nothing because he kept saving with his 4-up and vulnerable saves. My Devilfish fired.
Transhuman.
Yeah, and Transhuman. He activated Transhuman, which really actually screwed me over quite a lot. And then all my other guys... Yeah, it did. And then the Pathfinder team on the left shot with stuff. Did almost nothing, but his iron rifle got through and successfully killed one. I mean, I did exactly what I thought I said I would. I would fire a little bit. Actually, I did better than I thought I would on the right side, but on the left side against the Vanguards, not as well. There's still way too many of them. And yeah, and so we'll see how this goes. Oh, and then my stealth suits fired desperately at the Devastator Marines, did nothing. And that was my turn. Alright, a pretty good shooting phase, I guess. That's pretty much it. In some ways I blundered. My stealth suits are out in the open, but we'll see how good their stealth is, their touching cover. As far as points goes, I did get decisive action. I control half of the objectives. Raise the Banners is on the way. No Prisoners is going to show up in a big way towards the end. So we're going to see how this game goes right now. These are just opening moves. Like, who can predict it now?
Alright, you guys, so for movement, everything move forward into the cover because I don't want to get shot. Now, my characters all huddled up behind the Blade Guard bed, so they're within 3 inches. And so he won't be able to shoot them unless... I don't actually know what it would take for him to be able to shoot any of those 3 characters. Calgar also ran up, and so he's within 3 inches, so he's good as well. And then my intercessors on the bottom move forward, so they were able to poke out of the windows, as did the Devastators with the grav cannons. And then my Inceptors, the ones that are left, moved up forward into the trees, so they're out of view of his big tank, I believe. I didn't super check it, but they're just closer while still being in extreme cover. And so, yeah, so basically just moving up into cover and doing my claim for Mackridge, or what is it called? March for Mackridge secondary, where I claim no man's land objectives for the Ultramarines. And that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the psychic phase, Tigurius tried to essentially gain a command point. I needed a 7, I rolled a 5, and even with his +1 took me to a 6, so it did nothing. Then he tried to smite the Pathfinders. It did go off, it was only a D3, so he did 2 damage, just killing off 2 Pathfinders, and that was it. Alright, you guys, so in my shooting phase, a little bit happened. My Inceptors shot at his
Pathfinders.
Where are they? Pathfinders. There we go. They killed 7 because they have a ridiculous amount of shots. And then there was only 1 left because they got smote, and then the shooting. So Calgar decided to take Gulliman decided to shoot with his gauntlet. He failed, so I actually command pointed it, and I believe it killed the last guy. Yes. So that was kind of dumb, but it is what it is. And then the grav cannons shot at the Devilfish, and they were actually able to do 4 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage. So 2 shots went through, doing 4 damage total to the devilfish. So not great, not bad. And then the rest of my shooting was the intercessors in the middle and the devastators with the las cannons, shooting at his 3 stealth suits, because they had the -1 and they had a 1-up save because they were touching the walls, so like their, I guess, the cover procs or whatever. And so they were combined with the 4 las cannons and the 5 intercessors, they were able to kill the 3 guys, so that was cool. And then that was all my shooting, actually. And actually kind of my turn as well, but yeah, so that was it. Alright, you guys, so for secondaries in this turn, I have some March for Macrages in the works, but for right now, because those are a full battle round, so my next turn, I got nothing for Shock Tactics because I didn't take anything from him, and Oaths of Moment, I only got 1 point for not failing a morale test. And then Tide of Conviction obviously actually pairs really well with Shock Tactics, but I didn't take anything, so I got 1 point in secondaries this turn.
Alright, so for the movement phase, essentially what happened was a lot of chess making and thinking. So for the right side, move the devilfish to be in a position where they won't get hit by the grav cannons, but can still shoot. However, I forgot that I block line of sight now, so I remember that a little too late. The long strike moved up to hit some targets. He's safe from the grav cannons as they are now-ish, but yeah, he blocked off the devilfish. My breacher fire wars moved into position where they can stop his inceptors from being able to get inside the building, so they'll get cover and they'll stop him from standing on the objective. So let's see if that works well. Alright then, my devilfish from the middle moved down to the main objective, and then my pathfinders ran pretty poorly, but they were able to go quite a distance. Surprisingly, they actually have 7-inch movement. Did not notice that. And so these guys basically moved off to a corner. Basically, the way it looks, like there's not much enemy shooting there, but there is like a bit of a melee threat coming. So I was trying to, if I make my opponent make more decisions, they'll eventually make a wrong one. And so then I moved the devilfish also to sort of intercept, to get in the way and get some shooting in. The crisis bodyguards moved in a position where they're not going to be seen by the devastators, but will still be in a position to do something good. The commander moved up, and the broadsides moved a little bit. And then finally at the very end is the second turn. My crisis suits came in deep striked in the back. And yeah, and we'll see how this goes. Alright, so I start off with the right, with the long strike, firing at the... what are those guys called?
Intercessors. Inceptors.
So he fired his big gun. It hit. It wounded. And basically he killed one outright because at AP -6. And the 3 mortal wounds that were done in addition killed another guy. So they left with 1 guy left. And so he fired all the rest of his guns. And I believe it finished him off because I used my 2 seeker missiles that he came with to finish it off. I just needed it dead so it wouldn't be brought back. I need him to have less units. Then I moved all the way to the left, and my Pathfinder team did marker lights onto the intercessors, got them off. I reread the rules for the marker lights, and I'm guessing on this, that each guy who has it can try to apply marker lights, and the whole squad has the ability. So, all right, and so they applied marker lights onto him, and yeah, and after that, then they they fired all their guns, and they did some pretty decent damage. Their basic assault rifles, the pulse carbines, successfully killed 3 of them. That was shocking. He rolled horribly. And then my rifles, my ion rifles fired and did 1 wound. And so there was 2 guys left, and then the devilfish fired, successfully killed all of them except for 1 guy and did 1 wound. I had 2 of my seeker missiles for this guy. I spent 1 of them to kill him because I was hoping I could spare it for later. I forgot to declare targets beforehand. I'm making a lot of mistakes with Tau shooting, but new army, so. And then apart from that, that pretty much was it, except for I forgot to show this, but on top, my purple crisis suits open fire on the devastators, and they deep strike more than 12 inches away because he had Auspex scan. So I didn't want to get obliterated by the last cannons. So they fired and they were successfully able to kill 2 guys from the last cannon Devastator squad. So the sergeant's gone and 1 last cannon guy. So that was actually pretty good. And that's the end of my shooting phase and turn. Okay, so he's slowly closing in on me and I'm picking him off. So I did control 2, control 3 at the beginning. Decisive action, I have half the board still. So I only have 1 more turn of getting this after, so I can get a maximum of 12, so I'm up to 8. No prisoners is stacking slowly. Raise the banners high. I got them for my command phase. Let's see if they can keep giving me dividends. Let's see how this goes.
Alright, you guys, so here is what has happened. What had happened was a couple of things. So being in the tactical, Ultramarines can move with their weapons and not count as having moved as long as they didn't run. So I was able to move my Devastator squads and my Stalker Rifle guys. Now the Stalker Rifle guys ended up running to sit them in the middle. Probably a bad idea, but because it's only 1 point a turn, so I don't really know if it's even worth it. But they're there, so it is what it is now. And so, but that means that my Devastators can move around without worrying about how it affects their shooting. So, my Vanguard vets, because I know the last Tau book, groups of units could shoot Overwatch, so like overlapping Overwatch. So he checked that out. Turns out that I guess it's not a thing, or if it is, we don't know where it is in the book. So I moved my Vanguard vets up because they got to do something, and charging is the only thing they can do. So moved them up. The Intercessor Sergeant, the sole survivor here, moved up to the corner of it, so it will be really difficult to see him and shoot him. Like, he'll have to really book it to do that. And then Calgar is sitting right over there with him because he's slow. So that was something I did not think through. And then my Devastator Marines with the grav cannons turned around to fire at the purple guys that showed up, because I do not like them. My last cannons are chilling out, but they went down a floor, so that way they can move around later if they want to. And then my Blade Guard vets and Gulliman ran because the positioning here, they can't really reach anything. So they basically, this is like where they just kind of need to book it and hope that they live kind of stage. And then the Intercessors they camped out there. The Apothecary and Tigurius also stuck around. And then at the end of the movement phase, the Apothecary brought back an Intercessor, and there was no one for him to heal, so he just brought back the Intercessor. And that was my movement phase. So Tigurius can't really see very much, so he used Scryer's Gaze to try and gain a command point, and I rolled the exact same thing I did last round, which was a 5. It was actually a 4 and a 1 very specifically, which was unfortunate. But yeah, so did that, and he can't see anything else, so that was the end of the psychic phase, just like that. Alright, you guys, so for my shooting phase, essentially nothing happened. I killed one of his little, the crisis suits, because what I didn't know is they had invulnerable saves. So my grav cannon shot and my last cannon shot at them, and I did 2 damage, killing off one of them. Or I guess I technically did 4 damage total.
Yeah, in total.
One of them had 2 wounds.
I had to use a command point reroll during the grav cannon shots because since he was wounded, I knew I wanted to keep him alive for the last cannons to minimize damage. So I basically spent my command point to reroll an armor or invulnerable save. He did make it, and so the wounded one was there for when the last cannon shot, and he was the only one who had to die. So minimized my losses there. So
yeah. Alright, you guys, so for my charge phase, my Vanguard vets charged his yellow crisis suit guys, and they got within 3 inches, so his commander also piled in, and we'll see if that was a terrible idea for him or not. And yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so in the fight phase, it was kind of sad all around, I think. I swung, and they killed 2 shield drones, Yeah, that was it. And killed the commander shield drone and 1 wound onto the commander himself. Then the commander swung back and killed 2 Vanguard vets, and then his crisis suits swung back and did nothing. But that's not really a surprise, I don't think, to anybody. So, but yes, that was the fight phase. All right, you guys. So for my points, I had 2 points on the primaries, because I hold 2, or I hold 3. But for Tide of Conviction, the mission secondary, I didn't take any of his objectives, so no good there. I got 2 full points, or full round points from March of Mackridge. And then Shock Tactics, again, I didn't take any objectives from him, so 0. But then I got 2 points for Oaths of Moment, because no one failed a morale test. And I have a unit within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. So not great on points. We're actually tied exactly as of right now. But yeah, so okay, so it's fine.
All right, so for the movement phase, I'm closing in. So can't remember what I did first. So my broadsides. This is my last turn that I get to run and basically shoot. So might as well move as fast as I can. So had my crisis suits up top run to get right next to Devastator Marines, like in between them. Then I had my Devilfish run, got 18 inches, got so far, but I wanted to put him in a place where he won't get obliterated by Calgar. And then I had my Pathfinders run. They got far up, so they're going to have a good chance of doing some damage. Then on the right side, my Devilfish moved over to try to... So basically, according to the rules, I'm building a castle. The Blade Guard are an issue. So what I'm trying to do is, he can't charge my guys because they can't fit inside. And since my guys are in such a position, they can't actually move onto it. So I'm basically blocking them. And so what I'm trying to do is forcibly block them in other directions and stuff and try to block them this way. Unfortunately, it's one-sided. He can go on the other side, but maybe it'll be better that way. Then I had my last team of breachers get out of their vehicle and move a little bit closer to these blade guards so I can mag dump them. So I have a bunch of vehicles there. Then my long strike ran, got 15 inches, and I put him just positioned so that Rabute Guilliman is the closest target so I can actually now snipe him. So we'll see how this goes. And, yeah, it's up in the air, so we'll see what happens. Alright, so for the shooting phase, I started on the left. I had the Devilfish fire, split fire. So he would fire his weak gun at the single guy there, and the rest of his firepower would go into Marnus Calgar. And basically, he was able to be killed, and then Marnus Calgar saved every single weapon he had, including the last of the Seeker missiles that this guy had. Then the Pathfinders fired their guns, and Calgar could not make a save to save his life. They successfully just brutalized him. Yeah,
it was pathetic.
And then onto the right, my long strike moved into position so that he could shoot Guilliman by having him the closest. And this is the one time he failed to hit. Using the Tau Sept ability to reroll to hit, he failed to hit. So that was an absolute disappointment, and then none of his other weapons did anything. Then, in the middle of the board, the broadsides fired at the Blade Guard veterans, and they slaughtered them. They killed 4 of them in total. Those absolute heavy weapons, high damage, high strength, high AP. Then moved on to the Devilfish. One on the right fired, did like a wound. The rest of the Devilfish couldn't see. The breachers, the blue squad fired at them, couldn't do anything. And then it went to the battlesuits. The commander, enforcer, and battlesuit successfully killed 1 guy with his Melta. And then after that, nothing happened. The crisis bodyguards fired, and with all their weapons, were able to kill like 1 guy. Absolutely terrible. I'm rethinking these flamers. They're not as good as I thought they would be. And that was the shooting phase.
Surprising, right. Actually.
Charge phase. These guys will charge the last cannons. They're
interesting.
And that's it. Alright. This was a disappointing fight phase. So my crisis suits up top swung on the Devastators, did absolutely nothing. except disable some guys from shooting. After that, what happened next was he swung with his Vanguard vets on my guys, and he did absolutely nothing. He successfully killed one shield drone, and another one survived just barely. I spent a CP to reroll to make sure the last shield drone would survive, and so far, those drones have been totally worth their points. Then he swung on my commander, did absolutely nothing, because I saved it. And then I swung back. My commander obliterated 2 of them. The rest of the guys kicked the shins off one and killed one. And so, it's a really terrible phase. Alright, so for points, I'm slow and steady wins the race. I maxed out decisive action. Surprisingly, it worked. Surprisingly, doing my best to hide and cower and control the first 3 worked out. No prisoners is slowly slogging along. Raise the banners high, got another 3. He hasn't touched anything of mine. And I did control 2, control 3 at the beginning, so I am being consistently strong ahead.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, Calgar moved towards the Devilfish, the Intercessor's in the middle of the thing. Actually, let me make sure that they're... Shoot, I gotta actually... There we go. The Tigerius and the Apothecary moved closer. The Blade Guard vets moved up towards the Breachers, and Gulliman moved towards the Long Strike. And so just kind of a lot of movement. The Vanguard vets stayed in their pile of shame. And I think that's it, yeah. Get you guys, so Tigerius was trying to basically mortal wound that Devilfish to death. So with his smite, he rolled into the high bracket. So he was able to do d6 mortal wounds, and I rolled a 5. So he did 5 mortal wounds, and then I used telepathic assault, which I try and beat his leadership, and the difference is mortal wounds. Unfortunately, I only beat it by 1. So he took a 1 mortal wound. If I rolled a 10, he would have died, but that is not where we're at, so that's okay. He is bracketed pretty heavily, though, so that's good. But that was my psychic phase. Alright guys, so my Devastators piled on their shots on the Crisis suits. I was able to do 2 whole damage to them. So, you know, high rolling. And then Calgar and the Intercessors in the middle shot at the Pathfinders on the edge over here. And I was able to kill, what, 3, 4 of them, maybe?
3.
And then the Blade Guard vets shot at the Breachers. I killed 1. And Gulliman shot at the Long Strike, and he actually did 6 damage. Because his gauntlet actually is pretty rude. And that was my shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so charge phase, everything that charged actually made it. So who did I start with? The Blade Guard vets got in, they rolled a 7, they walked through the wall, and they're in. Then, I keep calling him Calgar. Gulliman charged the Long Strike, and he got in. And then Calgar charged the Devilfish, and he got in. And then my Devastator squads charged the Crisis suits in the back. And he overwatched on the Devastators, but I rolled really, really well for all my saves. And so he actually ended up not doing any damage. And then, yeah, so they both also got in. So everyone who charged made it. Alright, you guys, so with combat, a lot happened. So Blade Guard vets is where it started. Swung on the Breachers, whatever they are. Killed 8 of them. There was 9, so 1 guy lived. Then I moved on to Gulliman. He had 7 attacks, and he failed all of them except for 1, which went through. Because he actually saved, well, so 2 went through, but he saved 1 on a 6. So he would have died, but instead he lived because Gulliman can't swing to save his life. And then we went all the way across to Calgar, swinging against his Devilfish over there. And he actually did pretty well for himself, I believe, but I think he re-rolled it or something. I don't know, but anyway, so one wound got saved. Or no. something happened. Either way, he did 12 damage in his one swing, but it has 13 wounds, so it is alive with 1 wound. And then my 5 Devastators swung on his purple Crisis suits, and they actually did 2 damage. So they killed 1 guy and did a wound on the other, which was more than I expected. And then he swung with his commander all the way up at the top, and he squashed 2 of the Vanguard vets.
Again, like every turn.
Right, and then the Vanguard vets swung back on the yellow squad, and they did literally nothing, like they have the whole game. And then they swung back, the Crisis suits, and they actually did a damage. Yeah, so not super ideal of a combat, given that that's kind of what I was supposed to be good at, but it did not seem to be that way.
And also the lone Breacher Fire Warrior on the right objective did 1 wound back to the black Blade Guard.
I forgot about that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, so that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so this turn was actually not bad for me as far as secondaries and points. So I had the 2 primaries, but because I was actually able to take his Breachers off of that objective on the right, I believe it's the right for you guys, left for me. I got 2 points for Tide of Conviction, and then 3 points on Shock Tactics, and then I got 2 points for Oaths of Moment because I have someone in the middle, and I didn't fail a morale test. Unfortunately, none of his vehicles were destroyed, so I wasn't able to get any additional points for that. But yeah, so not bad on secondaries. I think this turn, hopefully next battle round, I'll be able to get another Macridge one, but we'll see.
Alright, so for movement, I pulled back one of the Devilfish drones. We had to look up a rule to see if he could actually run as well as fall back. Then apart from that, I just moved my Breacher team on the bottom to intercept the Blade Guard. Devilfish moved in, other Devilfish got their eyes on. Broadsides moved around. My commander moved towards these intercessors. The Breachers, the other Breachers moved around. So we'll see what happens. Alright, so for the Tau shooting phase, basically first I start off with the long strike. According to the rules, he could fire into combat, but he would hit on 5s, and he did. He rolled a 6, and then he wounded. And Gulaman had no saves against it because it ignores invulnerable saves, and so I rolled for damage, and I did max damage of 12. And he died. And then I had on the bottom my Breacher team, and all the Devilfish fire at the Blade Guard veterans, killed 2 of them. Then I went up top and had my Pathfinders fire at Marnius Calgar, and they did 4 damage to him. They did their overcharged rifles. However, because he has have all damage, he survived. He has 1 wound left. His Pathfinders have been doing all the damage to him. Then the Then my commander mag dumped the intercessors and successfully killed 2. Then my Crisis bodyguards, the yellow squad, obliterated the 1 veteran that was still fighting them from shooting. Then after that, my Breachers fired at the intercessors, did 1 wound. Then my broadsides fired at the apothecary standing out in the open and deleted him. And then the Crisis, my purple Crisis guy at the top fired all his shots into the grav cannon guys and killed them to the man. And that was my shooting phase. Alright, so for the charge phase, basically what happened was I had my 1 Devilfish, the nearly dead one, charge the Blade Guard. I'm hoping that I can stall him for a bit. Then I had my commander charge the 3 intercessors, and let's hope something good comes of it. Alright, so for the fight phase, I had my commander swing first, and I had the commander swing first, and despite having to reroll hit and wound, he just keeps only being able to kill 2. So terrible. And then the Blade Guard veteran, the Devilfish swung on the Blade Guard veteran and did nothing. Then he swung back with the Blade Guard veteran and did 2 wounds to it. And then up top, he also swung against my Crisis suit up top and did nothing because this one has a 2-up save. Then he swung back and I did no wounds. And he swung back with his intercessor and did absolutely nothing. And that's where we're at. Alright, not looking good. I only got Raise the Banners high, and so... Yeah, that's it. 1 point for Raise the Banners high. My Tide of Conviction, or my Decisive Action is over. I wasn't able to get Tide of Conviction. We're seeing how things go, but so far not good. I wasn't able to hold 2 at the beginning, so we'll see what happens next turn.
Alright, you guys. So, movement phase, Calgar, he wasn't in combat anymore, so he moved up towards this Devilfish. I'm hoping I'll be able to just shoot off the long strike. Tigurius is moving forward towards the Fire Warriors. The Devastator Marines left combat with the suit. Calgar moved on to this objective, as well as being within an inch of the Devilfish. And then the Intercessor on one of his objectives actually moved back out of combat, but still on the objective. So yeah. For my psychic phase, Librarian Tigurius used Smite on his commander, doing 2 damage to him. And then he did the Scryer's Gaze, giving me a command point. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, here's what happened. So Guilliman shot at the long strike, hoping to kill it. He did not. He did 2 damage to it. And then the Blade Guard veteran tried to kill the Devilfish with his pistol. He did not. He didn't actually do anything to it. And then Calgar shot at the Pathfinders. He killed 2 of them. The Las Cannon Devastators shot at the Crisis Suit, trying to kill him. They did not. And then the Blue Intercessor shot at the Commander, I believe, trying to hurt him. He did not. And then the Green Intercessor shot at the Long Strike to try and kill it. They did not. But they did do 1 damage. So, kind of not good shooting phase, but at the same time, it's more or less what I expected. Except for Guilliman. He should have killed the thing, but he's dumb. So. Alright, you guys, so for charges, everything that charged made its way in. So Guilliman charged the Devilfish, fighting the Blade Guard veteran. He got in. Calgar charging the Devilfish over there got in. The Devastators charging the Crisis Suit got in. And Tigurius charging the Breachers got in. So everyone is in. And that is my charge phase. Alright, you guys, so Guilliman charged in and he beat up the Devilfish. It did not explode, doing a ridiculous d6 mortal wounds. I don't know why. Well, anyway, not important. And then they consolidated him and the Blade Guard. Then Calgar swung and he just mercilessly beat up that Devilfish. All 7 of his attacks hit and wounded. If only did that the first time, but whatever. Anyway, and then the Devastator swung and they actually did 1 wound on the Crisis Suit. They kicked him in the ankle, kicked him real good. And then Tigurius swung. He hit with all of his attacks and wounded with all of his attacks, killing 5 Fire Warriors, leaving half the squad. So then he swung back with his Crisis Suit, and he actually did a wound, because I failed to save, and then the Breachers swung, but they did not wound. And that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I had more, so I was able to get the full primaries here. I got Tide of Conviction for the 2 points. I didn't get Shock Tactics because I didn't actually take anything from him. And then March for Macridge I also didn't get because I didn't have the ability to do any of those objectives. And then O's of Moment I actually got the full 3 points for. So currently I'm actually doing good on points. So this is his last turn for points. I know he still has no prisoners, but we'll see how that turns out. So we'll see what happens here. Yeah.
Alright, for the movement phase, command phase first, I spent a CP to make my long strike count as his full wounds, so he'll have his full abilities. And I moved him to intercept Guilliman. I had the Breachers fall back, who suffered heavily from morale phase, to get on the objective. We'll see what happens. Devilfish is nearby to see and shoot something. And then my my broadsides can fly, so they moved on top of the obstacles to see everything. Crisis suits moved as well. We'll see how that goes. And yeah. Alright, so for the shooting phase, I had a lot of stuff happen. So I had my commander fire and shoot off the guys off the objective, but he still had one guy. So then my crisis bodyguard saw him, shot them, killed 2 of them. Then my commander shot the last guy off. It was difficult because then I have to roll a 9 to make a charge to get onto the objective. And so what was more likely, the ability to deny him the point or to take it from him? And so then the broadsides, a nuke to the one guy holding my objective hostage thing there, and the breachers are doing an objective to raise the banners again. Then my crisis suit up top fired and successfully killed 2 of the devastators. Actually pretty good kills. Then the long strike, being treated at full health, fired at Gulliman, hit, wounded, and that was it. I did a minimum of 10 damage to him and Gulliman was dead. And then the real miracle was the Devilfish. At the bottom, fired at the lone guy that was there, the Blade Guard veteran, and successfully did 3 wounds to him, and he died. And so I took that objective back, which is good for my... well, nothing in particular here, but... yeah, and that's about it. Alright, the longest combat of the century. The Crisis suit versus the Devastator Marine. They kick each other in the shins and do nothing. Alright, so I unfortunately don't claim my points at the end for my turn at the beginning, so I was denied them because my Crisis suits didn't have OBSEC, and I can't find that my Tau troops had OBSEC. If they do, then I would actually be winning right now. But I can't find anything that says they do. And so, I got Raise the Banners though. And we'll see what happens.
Alright, you guys, so Calgar just moved farther into his objective. Tigurius moved on to this objective up here, and then he'll promptly kill these guys, and it'll be okay. And then the Devastator, I was thinking about moving him onto one of my other objectives, just that way I could have 3 or more. But then I was like, but doing that would give him my back objective for Tide of Conviction, which would not be great. So I left him there, and I hope to kill him. I mean, I've been hoping to kill him. But this way, I'll hold the objective, and that way I'll have 3 in the more, so I'll have the full primaries. Alright, you guys, so Tigurius smote his long strider, his railgun thing, and he used his other ability, telepathic assault, on the 2 breachers left, and he killed them as well, giving him the objective. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, Calgar finished off the 2 little Pathfinders, and then the Devastator Marine shot his last cannon at the Crisis suit. He hit, he wounded, and then he saved it. So, once again, they just end eternal rivals.
Alright, so for points, this is the end. So what we did quickly was we did a quick Google search on Tau OBSEC, and we basically found that it was mentioned in a single line that I missed, but basically all troops were OBSEC, and so I did Control 2 for 2 turns, so we added those points in. And unfortunately, I did not get any single one of Tide of Convictions at all. I thought I could have gotten one once, but I didn't go for it, and it would have only been 2 points anyway. I didn't take their back objective, so I got my max points that I could get from decisive action. No prisoners, so we added that tally up, and so I did 101 wounds total. And so that got me the maximum of 10 points, and then you get 1 point for being over 50 and 1 point for being over 100, so I got 12. And then Raise the Banners, I got my extra 2 points at the end for it. Yeah, and that brought me to 13. And then my opponent had many Tide of Convictions he kept getting. He got his Oaths of the Moment, and it ended up with a score of 71 to 74, and if I had one more turn, I would wipe him off the map. Yeah.
But you didn't. So, Ultramarines were able to pull through on a victory here. Because of points. Honestly, that was it. I guess they're just dirty, maybe. I don't know.
It was just
okay on my secondaries.
I had to keep retreating for shooting and stuff. He could keep pushing forward and taking the objectives. That essentially was it. That got
And
me.
then we both had bad sets of rolls.
Mhm.
So some of your damage, some of my saves, some of my damage, some of your saves.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's just how it goes.
All right, and that is game. All right. And for MVP, LVP. For LVP for the Tau, it is obviously the stealth suits who got obliterated because they couldn't run more than 2 inches. So they didn't have any part of the game.
Legs.
Like everyone played a part, they all did stuff, but they did the least. So waste of like 100 some points or something. Like how many points were these guys? Pathfinder team. 100. No wait. No. Wherever they are located. 85 points. Whatever. That's still too much. And then MVP. I actually have a pretty decent tie because there's a lot of accomplishments. So my commander for just slaughtering exactly 2 Space Marines every fight phase. Very consistent, did a lot of damage. The Onager Gauntlet Relic is really strong. His Warlord trait of rerolling all to hit and to wounds was really good. If I should have just given him like fusion blasters and just given him just non-stop meltas. That would have been far better. And then broadsides. They technically really didn't do well because of their positioning and stuff. They had few targets, but like the first turn they couldn't shoot anything, but every turn they fired, they completely deleted their enemy unit. They killed the apothecary, they killed a bunch of blade guards. They just kept slaughtering every single time. So whenever they were brought to shoot, they deleted it. But the true MVP, like these guys are the runners-up. The true MVP is the Long Strike. Because this guy, he killed a lot of Blade Guard repeatedly. He killed Guilliman twice. He only missed once on his big gun. So even though, I mean, if he didn't have any super heavy important characters or big vehicles, he wouldn't be as useful. But he did a lot of good. He slaughtered. He was very consistent. He was very strong, and he survived against Guilliman, against a lot of things. And he was able to just go back right up there and slaughter. So MVP
He
is...
got pretty lucky surviving Guilliman. But
Yeah. Long Strike. Absolutely wonderful. So what was your MVP, LVP?
Well, it's kind of hard to say MVP-wise because most of my army didn't actually do very much.
Says the winner. But
So I ended up going with Tigurius. Most of the game, he actually really didn't do anything. He failed a lot of his early spells, and his damage was negligible. But towards the end, he started actually picking up the pace. He killed the Long Strike. He smote a bunch of Pathfinders, and he also survived long enough to take that end objective. So I guess MVP by default, because everything else didn't do super well. The Blade Guard didn't really do very much. They were hidden most of the time. They got shot at, and then they killed eight breachers, I think, or 9 breachers, and that was it. So LVPs, it's quite a crowded room, but what I would say is my all-time LVP for this was the Vanguard vets, which is surprising because usually they are just brutal, but this time they sucked. The power axes, I guess it's an Ultramarine weapon, but did not do any favors for them. It's +2 strength and -2 on the AP, but they lost to mech suits. So they just sucked. I mean, that was terrible. Granted, they had a bunch of invuln saves, and that's probably really what saved them, but still, they killed 1 shield drone. Like, that was it. So LVP, Vanguard vets. Guilliman is really close there. He did almost nothing, and then he failed his one major combat with your railgun guy. he should have easily killed it, but he did not. And then Calgar is right down there with him. He had some good chances early on, whiffed horribly. He ended up surviving and kind of, I guess, pulling it out of his butt at the end, unlike Gulliman, who just died.
Twice.
So I would say LVPs. Yeah. I guess the more combat-centric stuff, actually, weirdly enough, for this list, didn't do well. Even the Blade Guard vets, they didn't really do a whole lot. They just kind of hid and then died. And then 2 or 3 guys actually did stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where I'd say MVP, LVP. Yeah, I wanted to take all their, like a bunch of their unique characters, so that's why I did what I did, but they're definitely not, it's not an optimal thing, I think. Maybe one of them, and then some regular guys, or, you know, different ones or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think of the Tau?
Well, it's a start. I feel like I gave the Crisis Suits and a lot of the guys the worst guns they could have. The Flamers were not as good as they could be. The Commander, I'm surprised at how well built he can be. It is absolutely surprising. And so, he very powerful, very dangerous. If I gave him better guns instead of the Flamers, he would have slaughtered much faster. Probably would have been a very different game. The Crisis Suits as well. It's just, I gave him really not the best weapons. Tau Flamers were good, but they had no AP. Like a lot of shots, didn't matter. Broadsides were very strong, but they were kind of hemmed in. Devilfish, surprisingly, were very powerful in this game. Very good. The Seeker missiles were just 5 points apiece, and so it really did well. And yeah, it is a bit surprising. Like, they can have a lot of troops and stuff, but I guess you have to choose them better. The Pathfinders were not as good as I'd hoped, but their heavy weapons and stuff did really well. So, it's a learning experience for sure. Probably changes I would make. More Crisis Suits, or if I ran the same list, change all the guns to be more the heavy damage and stuff like that. More the Meltas, like fusion guns, fusion blasters. I mean, that's pretty much where it's at.
Right.
The mass horde of shots and stuff I could leave to like some infantry and such. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I have to change a few things around a bit to make it more optimized. Stealth suits were a bit disappointing in this terrain and stuff, but yeah. But overall, I'm quite surprised with them. Yeah, it's a different army. It's an interesting army.
Yeah, they definitely had some interesting things. I think they have a lot going for them, so it's just kind of like it was a lot to kind of pick
I don't
and choose
understand
from.
why they've kind of fallen off like the tournament scene though. It's like just disappeared.
It's probably because they only have shooting. So if anything can get in, unlike, well...
It's kind of true because I had to keep falling back, and so it
might just be hard to do, like, objectives and stuff in that sense. That they can't actually hold a piece of the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, of course, if they're tabling it, then...
Yeah, I probably played them wrong. But then again, I did not have, like, the big battle suits, the Riptides, and stuff like that. So...
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to experiment with in the list.
Yeah, but too much for me to learn in one small go, so I stick to the most basic tactics. Rapidly move around the board, swarm enemy, hold objectives. That was the basics of my idea. So how did you do with the Ultramarines? Like, what do you think?
I like them. I think they have, like, even just the being able to fall back and shoot is... Well, it ended up not doing anything for my Devastators, but it's a really cool option to have. And then Gulliman, so I definitely, like, I think when you take him, you have to build around him because he has such massive bubbles of auras. Mm-hmm. And so I think he could literally, like, if you built an army around him, you could buff an entire army for the most part and take it from being like an okay army to like pretty lethal with all the rerolls that he can do. So, but I did want to, so I kind of got slanted with trying to just take like these name characters and then some stuff that would kind of feel like it fit. So I feel like with Ultramarines they lean towards a little bit more of a shooting army with maybe 1 or 2 solid, maybe melee units or maybe a dreadnought or something. But I did like them. They have a lot of flexibility. They're able to quite easily jump around the doctrines. And then in tactical doctrine, you know, you can move and not count as having moved for shooting purposes. So infantry with heavy weapons have a huge advantage with that that they wouldn't normally have. So I think that's pretty cool. So I do like them. I can see why out of all the Space Marine chapters, they're probably one of the more popular ones to play.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the fact that they're, you know, the icon for Games Workshop. They do have a lot of interesting stuff. They have a lot of relics. They have a lot of unique units. So it's, yeah, I did like them, but I definitely did not make a great list with them. I probably would take Gulliman again, but I wouldn't take him as, you know, this big damage, whatever. Now, granted, the thing that ignored invulnerable saves was not great, so...
Yeah, because you have a 3-up invulnerable save, so...
Yeah. So I suppose he is probably really hard to take down.
You just got seriously hard countered. That was it.
Yeah, well, also, because he has less than 10 wounds, he could actually have hidden next to units, but because he has 8-inch movement, it was kind of hard to pair him well, and then in a way that he wouldn't get shot. So, because, you know, you're trying to move everything up, and so he's moving faster than everything else. Or he's just sitting behind everything, and it's just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I think it was okay. I liked their secondary. I thought that was kind of cool. It was a little hard to pull off, just because it's a full battle round thing. So had the Blade Guard veteran, for instance, survived, I would have been able to have done that on yours over there. But he did not survive. So.
All right then. Well, GG's, and we'll see what we're playing next week. I'll be playing Tau. I don't know what you're playing.
Death Watch.
I'll probably be bringing like a Riptide or something like that because I gotta try it at least once. All right then.
Yeah.
GG's.